Welcome to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by rockauto.com. Here's your MotorWeek podcast host, John Davis.
And thank you, Alec Webb, and welcome everyone to MotorWeek podcast number 248. And with us today is our senior executive producer, Dave Scrivener.
Hello there.
Hi, Dave. Writer, two-wheeling reporter, Brian Robinson.
Hello, everyone.
And over-the-edge reporter and the producer of these podcasts, Greg Carlos.
Good to be here.
Well, this is a very, very special show because this is the show where we actually talk about our recently announced winners of our 2021 MotorWeek Drivers Choice Awards. If you've missed the actual ceremony, usually we do it at the Chicago Auto Show every year. But of course, this year, because the show was postponed, we did it virtually so you can catch it online. But we're going to cover everything basically that we talk about on that ceremony and a lot more today, because we're going to run down the list of the entire Drivers' Choice Awards. And those of you that aren't that familiar, what makes our awards different than a lot of other awards is we do pick winners in individual categories, from best small car to best full-size pickup truck, even dream machine, something you'd buy if you won the lottery. We go down the list and then we double back and pick our best of the year. So with that, we're going to start at the smaller end and where we normally start these awards, and that is Best Small Car for 2021. And the Driver's Choice Awards goes to the Mazda 3 for 2 years in a row. Now, why, folks, did we do that? Who would like to start off?
I'll take a stab at that. I think it's just driving fun in the small car segment there. Everyone else seems to be economy focused, and we are driver's choice, and we enjoy driving the Mazdas. They have that. Well, they still use the Zoom tagline. I think it's something different now, but I think it still fits.
Yeah, it's always been super fun to drive, but they've gotten last year and then this year, they keep upping their game as far as refinement. So it was always they're fun to drive, but now they've just gotten rid of the butts.
Well, they had a new 2.5 liter turbo engine that basically gives it a little bit more zoom, as Dave said. Greg, what do you think?
Yeah, we kind of we didn't sit in a room together this year, but we sat virtually and we sit and vote. This one got my vote for all the reasons they just said. I'm partial to Mazda. I've owned several of them. I have one right now, and they drive so well. And now that they now look as good as they drive inside and out. I mean, looking at some of the other competitors, I think the Elantra got some votes from our staff because that was also updated or not, that was a total redesign, which it's a really nice car, but I think it speaks to just how well the Mazda drives that we were able to pick it again.
I agree. Our best family sedan of the year. This year, it's the Kia K5, and this car is the cousin to the Hyundai Sonata that won the award last year. But really, the K5 is not a clone, is it? It's got some real differences. Who wants to elaborate?
I found curious that they would get rid of the Optima name and relaunch it as the K5. But, the more you learn, making it more of a global thing, trying to bring some excitement into the segment, it somewhat makes sense. But ultimately, it comes down to how it drives and the amount of comfort and the way it looks that I think really made it a winner.
Yeah, I agree on the looks. As much as we like driving these cars, I also like looking at them. And they kind of took a step towards going more radical with styling. And I think that speaks to a little bit more to people of my generation, the millennials these days, that they're taking chances with their design language. And, they keep making that mid-size sedan is whatever they call it, Optima or K5 now. It's a really solid car.
Dave, anything to add?
I just found a little sportier to drive than the Hyundai Compadre, which I guess would be the Sonata. I just think the Optima is a little sportier tuned. or not the K5, I should say. It's more fun to drive like the Mazda was. That kind of sways my vote most times.
What we really didn't talk about was, for two cars to share so much, they really don't look or drive, of course, the same. But it was interesting that, Sonata won it last year, K5 this year for Kia. And when they were introducing the Sonata, we all asked them, why aren't you putting all-wheel drive on the new Sonata? And they basically said that the chassis wouldn't take it, which of course we now know was not quite true, because the K5 is available with all-wheel drive. And if you live anywhere on, say from Virginia north or in the Midwest, and probably even in the Northwest, really all-wheel drive, people want it no matter what they're driving. And here the Kia K5's got it. So it's a nice extra addition. Really doesn't help the car drive any better, except of course when you need it in bad weather. So
Confidence is important too.
hugely important, and safety. Best luxury sedan. On the segment we did for the show, we sort of basically start off by saying, luxury means different things to different people. And in this case, the Acura TLX is somewhat of a different definition. It is not your traditional luxury car that's plush and gives you all sorts of cocoon-like environment. It's actually a lot different.
We talked about this recently on a podcast, and I think every one of us was blown away with what we saw from it, because I think Brian had mentioned in the last podcast was that like the first TLX was kind of like okay, let's combine the TL and the God, I'm already forgetting all the names, the TSX, and they like let's put it all into one thing, and it was just like, okay, fine. But this one seems to like stand alone and like, okay, this is a really nice effort from Acura to make this like their sports or their luxury sports sedan, because drives great. They really killed the interior, as in a good way. They killed the interior. Can't say I mean, there's some things about it that not everybody loves, like the touchpad, but I mean, you can't please everybody, but it's pretty much the rest of the car was pretty awesome.
Yeah, for me, it's one of those cars where I'm not sure I could highlight one thing that it does better than everybody else, but as an entire package, man, it's just everything just works together so well. Everything fits together so well. It's just a joy to drive. Great overall package.
That's another one, all-wheel drive, right? Super handling, all-wheel drive.
Yes, and it's gone through, I think, several iterations and keeps getting better every time they bring it out. And it really does help you in handling.
Mm-hmm. Plus, they'll have the Type S eventually.
Yeah. Dave, anything?
No, I agree kind of with Brian, what he was saying. I think the driving dynamics of this car appeal to me. It's not quite as stodgy as some of the traditional pure luxury cars. I like a little more the dynamic of it, how cool it is to drive, and the interior. They killed it with that, like Greg said. So I concur.
It's funny when you hear us talking about the Acura TLX. What is in my memory is it seems like this was the kind of way we looked at the BMW 3 Series when it started to become more of a luxury, as much of a luxury vehicle as a sports sedan. It's like it wraps you in luxury, a traditional definition to a point, but it's more or less than that. Again, it's the total package. And really, if any brand manages to make the sum greater than the parts, it's got to be Acura. And for that matter, the whole Honda outfit.
And this is a tough category too, because you're going up against A4, S4, BMW, Mercedes, all the best from those Germans, and the fact that the TLX won, that's big for Acura.
I think so too. Best sports sedans, since we were talking about that, and I think this winner will surprise an awful lot of people. Maybe not because it has the AMG name in it, but Mercedes AMG CLA 35. Now, a lot of folks are probably not familiar with what the CLA even is. Who would kind of like to give us a little synopsis and why it's so unusual that we would pick this for a winner?
Well, it
Come on,
was,
Mr. Robinson. You're the wealth of knowledge about
The
vehicles.
fact that it's got AMG badge on it shouldn't make it, beyond belief that we would give it Best Sports Sedan Award. I guess the newsworthy item comes in that it's their entry level model. They've never had one this cheap before, and
or this good for the price before.
Yeah.
Absolutely that. I mean, it's a great little sports sedan, and it feels small, nimble, but it's got a heck of an engine in it, like everything else from
Stout.
AMG.
Yeah.
And it's not built to a price point. It doesn't feel cheap. Doesn't feel like you're lacking anything. Even entry level car like that, it's got all the equipment you need and all the comfort and the amenities you're used to in a Mercedes. But man, does it go!
We just did a first look on the upcoming EQA, and I had made a comment about how Mercedes does entry level really well. Like they don't really hold much back when you're talking about an entry level car. I think they probably best BMW there. When you get into a base BMW, you're pretty aware that you're not getting the full features that you would get in the upper level
Right.
trims, but not necessarily with Mercedes.
That wasn't always the case.
Yeah.
Remember the first ML came out. It's like, ooh, yeah. But they turned that around and really focused on wooing the entry level buyers, which I think is smart on their part.
I think you're
And then
absolutely right, Dave. If you even go back to their, smaller cars when they first started doing, oh gosh, I don't even remember how many years ago now, but
The
we were all-
190E.
that's a perfect example. We loved the effort, but you got in it and you thought, okay, is this a Mercedes taxi cab or what?
Right. Yeah. You don't feel that way anymore.
The Mercedes AMG CLA 35, winner of our Best Sports Sedan Award. Splitting hairs a little bit, our Best Sport Coupe, and this is a two-time winner. And of all this list, I have to probably think this is one of the biggest favorites, for 2 years running. But just in general, just if you had the money and you wanted to go buy something fun to drive, maybe an awful lot of people on the staff would do it. Toyota GR Supra. Why do we love it so much? And why did we pick it as Best Sport Coupe for a second year with so many other able rivals out there?
And you get the best of both worlds with Toyota and BMW in the same package, right?
True.
I think, the Toyota, the Supra is obviously the iconic name these days, very hot with the younger crowd. People long for our retro reviews of the old ones, and the car just drives. It's so tossable on the track, and I like the styling better than BMW's version of that chassis, even though the BMW lends a lot to Toyota with this. So,
You mean the
again, best of both.
convertible Supra called the Z4? That's
Right,
I see
that
it-
one.
I see it referred to that a lot.
Yeah, I mean, the original last year was nice enough, but it didn't wow me. But then this one, a few more horsepower, doesn't seem like it'd make a big deal. But to me, the car just felt so much faster. It's hard to even explain it, but it went from being really good to just great, just with some chassis tuning and a few more horsepower.
Totally. Yeah. Automakers know how to win us over. Just throw some more horsepower. And it was really the horsepower it should have gotten at the beginning, but I guess they gave more to the Z4 at the first year of production for the Supra. And then second year, we got the full effect of the engine. But they also offer a 4-cylinder engine option too. So you
New
can
entry
either have the
level.
4 or the 6. Yeah, for the Supra.
And it's a whole lot more affordable. So if you live basically in a situation where you can't really open it up, or you just want to look great and you're not as concerned about all the capabilities, it's pretty impressive. And it's a stout little 4-cylinder. I mean, it's nothing to sneeze at. So, but 2 years running, Toyota Supra, GR Supra. we do split our performance cars up a little bit. We have a category, best performance car, and they're a totally different, but just as desirable, perhaps more desirable, a vehicle. And it's really not one vehicle, it's a whole line. And that's the Porsche 718. And when you take a look at what is the essence of Porsche and their sports car heritage, to a lot of us, or especially, or certainly to me, what we used to say about the 911, we now say about the 718. But why don't you guys take it from there?
I think the whole calling card for this car, Cayman and Boxster, is balance. It's so dynamically balanced and so easy to drive well and fast. It makes a hero out of ordinary drivers, and
Right.
it's just so tactile and delightful to drive. I just can't top it. I'd buy it over a 911.
Would you? Well, even if they were the same price. So
Not just for the money, just a little more nimble and balanced, I think, and approachable.
Yeah, great feedback and just enjoyable to drive. And I'll yield the rest of my time to the gentleman from Frederick, who had some really great comments about it, particularly the GT4. And if he doesn't remember them, I'll quote him on
Hold
them.
on, let me go through my notes real quick. I have to find them. Yeah, yeah. I think my comment you might be speaking of is that after driving the GT4, I thought that all turbo engines should be outlawed because this it revs like a maniac. It sounds phenomenal. But I think, and not everybody gets this chance. And if you ever do get the chance, you absolutely should take advantage. But to drive a 911 versus a Cayman or a 718, because when you hear mid-engine and rear engine, a lot of people probably are thinking the same thing, but they behave very differently. The 911 is bigger, but it has a rear mounted engine as opposed to the 718, which is right there in the middle. I mean, the balance that Dave was talking about, it's incredible. And it's always like you know what it's going to do before it does it. And you can always catch it, or you can always make it do what you want. I mean, being able to have that engine right there in the middle makes a huge difference.
And you had it on track as well, right, Greg?
I did. Yeah, I drove
it on the track probably 2 years ago in the pouring rain, and it was still just as stable as can be.
Yep.
would you say would it be a stretch to say it's either the best or one of the best by, I mean, it's certainly at the top of mid-engine handling cars that we've ever driven. I mean, one of the best handling mid-engine cars we've ever driven.
Easily, yeah.
718 Porsche best performance car. You're listening to our MotorWeek 2021 Drivers Choice Awards, and we're now going to transition from cars to trucks and utilities. Best small utility is our first category, and with it, a new winner. Hasn't been even considered before because, frankly, it didn't exist before. The Ford Bronco Sport. Now, this is the car-based, if you will, smaller Bronco. This is not the truck-based descendant of the original Bronco that'll be out later this summer, but still looks like a pretty darn impressive vehicle, both on spec sheets and when you take a look at it. So why did we pick the Bronco Sport?
This was an easy vote for me. Oh, yeah. I'll go first.
Well, you drove it.
Yeah, I drove it. I was probably one of the first in the country to drive it. Back when we were able to fly a little bit. We've since been unable to do that. But it's a skate. Yeah. So it is a skate based. It's not, a body on frame SUV. But even though it's smaller, it's probably smaller than you think it is, even if you've seen it a million times. But it works with what space it has really well. It's got great headroom. Up front feels big. It's all about the utility and the fact that you can take it off road and, really do some serious stuff off road. I'm talking like Jeep levels of off-roading. It's real Jeep levels. Solid. Yeah, real Jeep levels.
Not the faux Jeeps.
It reminds me of the XJ as far as the whole layout. I mean, it's a little bit smaller, but still that kind of boxy, but extremely capable. Brian, I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Oh, no, you didn't cut me off. As much as I hate the like gimmicky goes over any terrain type things,
Goat.
all the
Goat.
Easter eggs and all that stuff. I mean, it's a legit small truck, even though it's not a truck. It's still a legit small SUV that I would love to own.
You wrote a really interesting line in the segment. You said basically where the world is full of crossovers that have more cladding than ground clearance, but the Bronco Sport is certainly not one of those.
I'm sure I stole that from someone else.
It was a good line. I like saying it. All right, Ford Bronco Sport, our best small utility. Our best midsize utility, we usually try and pick something that is a little more affordable than this winter, but really, I think it was unanimous vote. The Land Rover Defender, best midsize utility, descendant of that original almost farm implement that the Land Rover folks came up with after World War II, but totally different, but yet you can see the lineage. So why'd we pick it?
Well, you can feel the lineage too. It's off-road. It's the line from the road test. I guess it was Brian's as well. I should give credit. It's like a Jag on the freeway when you're driving off-road. It sucks at the bumps so well. I spent a phenomenal day with it, driving through the slop at our off-roading farm, getting our shots of it. And I get a priming out of it at the end of the day. It was just great fun.
Yeah, I kind of came in right at the end, like late 90s, mid to late 90s, right at the end of the Defender original go here in the US. And we had that red Defender 90 in. And man, I was a young motor weeker enjoying life, man, and that Defender 90. I love that vehicle so much. So like, I just wanted to hate this new one being too much, like a, Range Rover version of that. But man, it's still a legit off-road vehicle that looks cool and very luxurious as well.
From then you worked
It
your
hasn't
way up.
given itself over. Go ahead.
I was going to say, Brian worked his way up from a young pup to now he literally writes everything we all say. Like everything we've said so far, we're like, oh, well, Brian wrote it.
Brian wrote that.
Let's give
Brian
credit
wrote
where
that.
credit is due.
He does all the work around here. The rest of us just playing cards.
I have to say, the first time that I saw the new Defender, and I'm old enough that I take everything back to the original Land Rover, and even if you go back just to, as Brian mentioned, when the Defender model started, you look at it and say it really doesn't look anything like it. It's the seats look like they're actually comfortable, and all of this, but when you drive it, I was shocked at how different it feels from other modern Land Rovers, and it was kind of hard to put your finger on it. Maybe a little rougher around the edges, but also even more capable than probably easily the most capable lineup of utilities in the world. And it's one of those vehicles that you stand back and think, how did they do that? And I remember they actually had to devise new testing procedures because the testing procedures they were using weren't tough enough to find out what this Defender could do. So Land Rover Defender, best midsize utility. Best large utility. Maybe this is no surprise to everybody. We tend to end up giving this to whoever's new in any year because they keep, after so many years where there was very little competition in this realm, every year there seems to be a new one. But the ones that kind of started this category are back. The all-new Chevrolet Tahoe and Suburban. They basically had a tall order. They had to go out and kind of beat the Ford Expedition when it came to interior room and amenities, and basically I think they did it. It is a incredibly nice yet useful vehicle, more efficient than it was before. I'm not sure it looks better than it did before, but it's a big box that does a lot of things extremely well. And if you've got to tow a lot and carry a lot of family and all their stuff,
Mhm.
kind of blew away everybody else in the category. That was my take on it. How about yours?
Yeah. Well, I was saving my pennies up. I've owned a Suburban and a Yukon Denali over the years. I like the looks of this one. So it might be a year or two before I can get into one, but I've enjoyed driving the ones we've had. It's a great, smooth driving package, and it's still, I want to say, agile for a big truck, but it doesn't feel cumbersome at least.
New IRS.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, that was the big deal. Went to the rear independent suspension for the first time, which does improve ride, yes, but more importantly, interior packaging was a huge gain in space for the third row and cargo as well.
Mm.
The Hyundai Palisade and Kia Telluride, those two kind of sister SUVs, won it last year. So it's kind of funny to see, the original coming back and saying like, oh, wait a minute, I'm still the best in this category. So because
Hold the phone.
I guess we still could have given it to them because they were still eligible to win. But I think it was an obvious choice during our voting that Tahoe and Suburban were taking it back.
This is truly full size too, not the almost pretty close to full size.
Yeah, I guess I bet the only thing you can really buy for a reasonable price and, in so-called light duty, it's got more space on the inside's a minivan. So,
yeah,
that horrible word.
And that won't have the
Yeah. Best luxury utility. Another Mercedes-Benz in our list. This is the GLE. This is the second year that the GLE lineup has won. But in a way, it's not quite the same vehicle that won it this time. Who would like to expound on that?
Let's just go right to Robinson. What'd you write this
Might
time?
as well.
What'd you write this time?
Someone else, please. But yeah, I mean, it's a category where there's just tons of new vehicles constantly, luxury SUVs, of all shapes and sizes coming at us almost monthly. But again, back to that total package, the GLE, it just has it all: the luxury, the comfort, the horsepower. The other vehicle you're referencing is the coupe version, which European makers love to put new roofs and shorten the wheelbase on vehicles and then call them coupes.
Call them coupes. Yep.
Basically less practical version, but much more stylish, but also more performance, which was also fun to see.
I prefer more of the utility of the GLE and not the GLE coupe because you kind of do lose some space there. But of all the SUV coupes, I think I do like the way the GLE coupe looks over all the other ones. And then just interior comfort, the same things we were saying about the CLA. I mean, it's just the interiors are beautiful with that massive screen. It's just comfortable. It's again one of those twice in a row winners that it was just easy to make that call.
Sure was. Yep.
So best luxury utility, Mercedes-Benz GLE, 2 years running. One of the things about our Drivers Choice Awards is they are fluid. They live. They change as the industry changes. And this year we actually added a new category. This was in response to an awful lot of our viewers that said, why in the world, when it comes to pickup trucks being so popular, don't you have an award for something less than full size? So we've instituted our best mid-size truck award, but may disappoint a few people because what we picked as our winner, maybe it's a truck and maybe it's basically a car-like vehicle with a big open back, but the Honda Ridgeline. And we had good reasons for picking it, as you're about to hear from our gallery. Take it away.
I'll just jump right in so we don't have the awkward silence. Yeah,
well, that's tape delay, folks.
It'll be interesting to see if the amount of complaints for us giving it this award is larger than the amount of complaints for not having the award last year. But yeah, say what you want. It does truck-like things with more comfort and more features than anybody else.
Yeah. Well, don't you own one, Brian?
Theoretically, my wife does, but she does let me drive it to Lowe's
occasionally.
once in a while.
Do you
I think it's
ever,
every bit of truck. Yeah.
do you ever miss, Brian, having something bigger?
Not for my needs. I mean, it tows 5,000 pounds. That's what I need. I can get sheets of plywood in the back, no problem. So does everything I needed to do.
Perfect. Yeah.
Greg?
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna share the same comment about the fact that we have so many people complaining that we don't do the category, and now they're gonna be complaining the other way around. We're just not gonna make everybody happy. I think this is truly what we feel on this one. I don't, we don't really give in to pressure of outside forces on these votes, and I think the Jeep would have been the easy pick, the Gladiator, to just appease everybody.
Yeah, but until you drive it.
Right. None of us really enjoyed driving it as much as we like the Ridgeline. I mean, if you spec it right and you spend a lot of money, you can make it look pretty cool, and you got a nice Jeep pickup truck, but just a lot of money, and just in my opinion, you don't get enough for it. But admittedly, I'm not a Jeep person.
I like the clever engineering that they put into it that is aimed at the consumer. I'm a big proponent of two-way tailgates on pickup trucks. It's got one. And the underfloor storage in the back, which I have to admit, when the first Ridgeline came out, I sort of said, why do you need that? Well, boy, if you've got anything small that you don't want to put in the cabin, and I don't mean so small, but like, a tent or something like that you would put in the back, that you don't want to have exposed so somebody could lift it out of the an open rear box. That underfloor storage is fabulous. And of course, it can double as a big cooler with a drain on it. And it's like, who else? Nobody else has thought of something like that, short of the saddlebags on the big Rams. And it's just really smart engineering focused at the personal use buyer. So there you go. Best midsize pickup truck. Not quite your definition of a traditional truck, but does everything you need to do. The Honda Ridgeline. As again, Brian's script said, they didn't focus on off-road parks, but they just made sure they built something that keeps winning awards and pleases buyers. So I think that sums it up. We're going to now the best full-size truck award, and gee whiz, big surprise, folks. It's the all-new Ford F-150. But why, besides the fact it's the most popular vehicle in the country, why did it deserve this award this year?
I think the all-new version of it, I think Ford knows what people want, and they keep giving it to them, exactly what they want, plus new extras, like the onboard generator. When I first heard about that,
Yeah.
I mean, that just blew my mind.
Me too.
Why hasn't this been happened already? And it's just a great truck all around. A lot of cool features you never would have thought you needed until you drive a truck with one, and then you have trouble figuring out how you could live without them.
Mhm.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time in it this weekend. I actually did some work in it. I didn't deliver the lumber. I was working on a friend's deck. I didn't actually use it for that purpose, but if I did, I would have been able to measure things on the tailgate with the built-in ruler.
Cool.
I would have been driving in comfort to go get the lumper because it was, really comfortable inside, quiet. They have like a million different engine choices. You all get the 10-speed transmission, regardless of which engine you do go with. So yeah, like Robinson said, they just they know what people want, and they're just like, here you go, have it.
Yeah. Number one for a reason in sales.
The hybrid version with the largest generator, was it 7,000 watts, whatever, 7,500. Most people, even though you're not supposed to, and we're not advocating it, you just think about the emergency situations without power that vehicle is going to help you be able to get through, and how important that's going to be in natural disasters. If you basically have a tornado come through or a hurricane, and you happen to have a town that's got a couple of thousand of these F-150s around, all the work lights and emergency stuff they'll be able to run. I will be shocked if every other full-size truck manufacturer doesn't rush development of something comparable, because as you said, Greg, why didn't somebody think of that before? And go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I can't wait till next year's vote just to hear the Raptor versus TRX.
Oh
I
boy.
Yeah.
can't even wait for that.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
I will say one thing about the F-150 that I think escapes people. Ford's always kind of gotten, I wouldn't say a bad rap, but people say, yeah, it rides like a truck. But what they've done with that, especially going to the all aluminum body, is that they've improved their handling immensely and no longer handles like a traditional pickup truck. As a matter of fact, I think you have to be a little careful of yourself in traffic, not to, start driving like a cone cutter. It's pretty impressive, pretty impressive. We always have a category that sums up what you would do if you basically got lucky and won the Powerball. Our best dream machines, and we picked 3, and we're not going to spend a lot of time on any one of them, but let's go through them quickly. Excuse me. Our best dream machines, like I said, we picked 3. Sometimes they're cars, sometimes they're luxury SUVs. Starting off with a genuine car, the Bentley Flying Spur. Now, take it away. Why did that stand out among all the other high buck and high roller stuff that we tested this year?
For a car to have that much performance and be that luxurious, it just doesn't seem possible. It's basically a custom-made suit version of the Porsche Panamera.
Yeah. And you won't see yourself in every street corner driving through downtown Annapolis or Baltimore. You'll see 20 Panameras, and they're great. But it looks exclusivity and just the wow factor, and I like the timelessness of it. I'm an old car guy, so I'm an old car guy, and it just does it all well for me.
It's a car I would be as happy driving as being driven in. I mean, it's a work of art inside, and then the Panamera chassis just puts it over the top.
Our second pick is really a collaborative work of art, and one I don't think any of us a couple of years ago quite expected. Yeah, we know all the luxury brands were going to have to bring out an SUV at some point, but I think still the Aston Martin DBX surprised everybody.
Another beautiful, beautiful Aston. They did team up on the engine, right? They're using the Mercedes engine.
Why not?
Yeah,
not just any Mercedes engine, AMG engine.
Correct.
Again, just a ton of performance, a lot of luxury, and it's gorgeous.
And the name alone's enough for me.
And our third driver's choice dream machine, I guess you could honestly say we've never met a Porsche 911 Turbo we didn't love. And here's another one.
There you go.
The ultimate, street and track machine. It's just daily driver comfortable, and just goes like a rocket from a dig. Really awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, after all those great things we're saying about the 718, and as awesome as it is, when you get in this thing and just hit the throttle, I mean, it's really mind-blowing.
Yeah, well, there's different levels of Porsche performance for sure. Our last individual category is best eco-friendly, and over the years, we've given it to electric cars, to diesel-powered vehicles, to hybrids, all sorts of stuff. And this year it goes to a very controversial EV, which I think we all sort of stood back and said, what? When we first heard about it. But after we've driven it, we've said, why not? And that's the Ford Mustang Mach-E. 300 miles of range, some Mustang heritage in the styling cues, but more so in the performance. I guess what I'd like to hear from everybody is, can you sum up the first time you drove it? Was there something that reached out and grabbed you? I mean, I will admit it did me, but how about you?
I would like to hear yours first.
Well, I had a chance to ride in, as Dave did, a Mustang Mach-E in Chicago and a couple other places. And, it was interesting. It had, push button door openings and you got in it and it was a pleasing shape. I was pretty put off by bringing the Mustang heritage into it because I love Mustangs.
And you're
Um,
curious.
and I, well, I realized, Porsche did it obviously, and it was very successful. Keep hearing rumors that, Corvette's going to do it. We just talked about Aston Martin. So, it's not that it was an unusual thing, but there was very few names as hallowed as the Mustang. Well, when we finally got a chance to actually drive it and not be driven around in it, I was just astounded. I mean, yeah, it's fast. All EVs are fast, but it's fast and it sounds fast and it's fake. Okay, but it's appropriate. But then it came down to the handling. I thought the car just handled amazing for any kind of vehicle. It stopped very well. The center of gravity is obviously very low, but they've not stopped at just taking the physics. They've tuned it to where, yes, it felt like you could be in a Mustang, and then they added this, styling cues to go along with it. It exceeded my expectations in every category, and it hits that 300-mile mark. I should say it's also got all-wheel drive, which makes it a true utility. So yeah, every box checked off for me, and I was shocked how much I liked it. I guess that's a good way to say it.
I was impressed by the utility of it. It has plenty of usable space, leg room enough for me. I'm a tall guy. The trunk was usable. The trunk area was usable, but also it didn't drive like a big SUV. It drove, I won't say Mustangish, but more sporty than I'm used to in EVs. It's not just a commuter car. It's an enjoyable car to drive. It's nimble and supple on the bumps, and it just does it all as well as can be done.
Yeah, and all of that and more. The big thing to remember, though, is this is kind of just the base car. This is equivalent to an EcoBoost 4-cylinder Mustang. The GT is not coming out till this summer, which is going to ratchet up performance, not just a little bit. So I can't wait for that.
So yeah, more to look forward to.
Greg, you were a doubter at the beginning.
Yeah, and it didn't take long for me to be hitching my wagon to the Mach-E train. I love Mustangs as much as the next guy. I didn't have as much of an investment when people were, clamoring about the name. It didn't really affect me that much, but I didn't think they were going to make this good of an all-electric SUV this quickly. You hop in there and you're like, okay, well, it accelerates quickly. That's cool, but the steering's not probably going to be good. Well, the steering feels great. Okay, well, the braking's probably going to be odd because of regenerative braking. No, the braking's good too. It's like everything about it was so much better than I anticipated, and I went in thinking there's got to be something that I can pick out, and it just wasn't that way. And I really enjoyed. I spent even more time in it a few weeks ago and around my home area, and it was just everything I needed. Being able to put a child seat in the back, even though you have that sloping roof line, so it looks great on the outside. It's functional on the inside. It's awesome.
If the Mach-E is the future, maybe it's not going to be quite so devoid of automotive enthusiasm as some of us, I think, were afraid.
Thank goodness, huh?
Yeah. Okay. This makes an easy segue into our one award where we look at all the individual winners and we pick our best of the year. And those of you that may have caught the online presentation know that is indeed what we did with the Ford Mustang Mach-E MotorWeek's 2021 Drivers Choice Best of the Year. So we've been giving it all these praises. Any of that? Buddy, got anything else to add? I mean, we've covered the waterfront pretty well.
I think we said it.
I think it's fair to say no vehicle impressed us as much this year as the Mach-E, especially starting from, maybe low expectations is a better way to put it. I think we were all prepared to say, I told you so, and it just pretty much blew us away.
Right. It kind of shut up the doubters and naysayers.
Yeah.
And we spent, what, 5-6 minutes talking about it without once mentioning the ginormous touchpad control panel right in the middle of the dash. So they must have done that right as well, Greg.
You know, that's a really good point.
Yeah, I think I did actually mean to talk about that, because I don't think they went outside of themselves trying to be like a Tesla. They knew they had to make it look modern because it is an EV, but I think they had to keep it functional and easy to use, which is exactly what they did. So it is cool to see that big of a screen. But and this is no knock to Tesla. I just think it's easier to use as somebody who might not be like tech savvy. Everything's big, it's easy to see. You do control everything through it, but it's just easy to navigate.
Yeah, I wasn't put off by it at all.
What's the one thing it's got on that screen?
Volume knob.
It's amazing how important that is to automotive writers, isn't it?
There you go, people. That's the reason why we pick best cars of the year. If they have
Got radio knob, it's my vote.
So that's our list of our MotorWeek Drivers Choice winners for 2021. If you want to see the complete list and take a look at the segments, if you've missed it on the show itself, go over to our motorweek.org website, and you'll also find the segments on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/motorweek, and it's streamed, of course, on PBS Living over at Prime Video at Amazon. So anyway, that's a good rundown, but we don't want to close out this podcast without a couple of our normal segments. We have a viewer question, and this is from John Boyd, and that's not me. In a hurry one morning, John Boyd says he picked E85 to fill up his car instead of premium grade. He said he was very low on gas. He wondered if he should siphon it out of his tank and start fresh again, or what. He's probably already done whatever he's going to do by now. But if someone else makes that mistake, what do you think they ought to do?
One tank of it won't kill your car. I would keep diluting it with regular gas as you burn through it. Experts say a one-time mistake isn't fatal. It's not gonna you might get a check engine light that will go off as the fuel mix regulates back to normal, but I'd say top it off every day until you get it back to the right mixture of E10.
It's not worth getting a mouthful of E85. Now, if it was premium, I'd say go ahead and siphon it out. But E85, you don't want that.
No.
Yeah, as long as it wasn't a diesel, then he's all right.
All right, let's move on to our last thing we will always talk about. We'll wrap things up. Anybody got any rant and raves? I think we've been raving quite a bit today.
I do have. You out there? I've had one that's kind of built up for a while, and we kind of jump on bad drivers, but I think I don't want to get on it too much about like driving habits of individuals. But what I will say is if you're like a traffic weaver or somebody who likes to just get where they're going fast and at all costs cut people off, whatever, I'm not going to tell you can't do that. I'm not the person to police that. But what I will say is if you do that stuff and maybe you get caught behind a truck and you can't cut somebody off or you can't get into the spot you want to, I would say you should waive your right at feeling indignant, because you kind of get away with a lot of stuff, and you're lucky in some instances that people, like other people, are paying attention. There's a reason, not just because you're a great driver, that you haven't gotten into an accident. It's because other people see what you're doing and are just like, okay, I'm just not going to engage. So, that's what I'll say. If that's your style of driving, whatever, just don't get upset when somebody catches you or it doesn't work out in your favor.
I'm sorry. I think they're jerks. I really do. I think they're unsafe. They're uncaring about anybody else on the road but them. And I have very little use for them. But your last piece of advice is the best. Do not get goaded into engaging with them. Don't try to play their game. Don't try to close up their escape route, because, brother, you'd rather have them in front of you than behind you, for sure.
For sure.
There's just right now, there seems to be a higher incidence of these folks that drive like that reported simply because there's a little bit less traffic on the road because everybody's staying home. So
Yeah. And if you do drive like that, don't equate it with driving skill, because I can assure you I've driven with some really good drivers who don't do that. So I don't think it's because you're a good driver that you've gotten away with it. It's mostly luck.
Real
You're
quick.
impatient and you're selfish.
Correct. Brian, did you want to jump in?
I don't really have anything to add to this conversation.
He drives a
well-
Ridgeline. He would never do that.
I'm pretty say what I always say. As long as you're paying attention to what you're doing, and you're not looking at your phone while you're trying to drive, have at it, man. Whatever you want to do.
As the old man on the staff, I want to tell you a story. The first press event I ever went to for MotorWeek, like many of them, they paired me up with somebody else and we went out driving. Maybe it wasn't the first event, but it was in the first year we were on the air. And the person I was with was extremely accomplished, a very good driver, had been at it for a long time. And when it came my turn to drive, we were up somewhere in the mountains in California, and I was taking the curves and probably trying to show off a bit. And I was kind of all over the road. I was over the middle of the lines. I wasn't in the wrong lane, but I was cutting the lanes, cutting the corners pretty sharply. And he said, you know something? He said, the only way to ever test a car when you're on these kind of roads is to actually stay in your lane and see how it performs. That'll give you a true measure. And this basically trying to show you're a hot rodder and you can get through a corner faster than anybody else. You might make it, but it doesn't tell you anything about the car. And it's something that we, as we road test cars, have to remember. These cars should perform well under normal circumstances and normal extremes. So anyway, not sure if that enlightens anybody.
Well put.
But, that's where we're coming from here. Okay, I want to thank Dave, Greg, and Brian for being this, and for all of you out there for sticking with us for a little bit longer than usual podcast, number 248. Back at home base, our audio engineer, Jim Bigwood, makes sure the podcasts go out and sound well. Greg, thanks for producing it. Bob Mixter, our podcast creator. Until next time, be sure to catch MotorWeek on your local public television stations or over at our partner, Discovery's Motor Trend cable channel. We mentioned our YouTube channel, our website, all the folks at PBS that make us possible around the country. But just remember, wherever there's a screen, you can catch MotorWeek and join us again for our next podcast. And we want to thank you all for being a part of MotorWeek.
You've been listening to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by RockAuto.com. For additional information on podcasts, videos, and showtimes, visit our website at motorweek.org. And watch MotorWeek, television's longest-running automotive magazine series, each week on your local PBS station.